I'm not an impulsive person. I'm the guy who reads the fine print, who keeps a running spreadsheet of our bills, who thinks risk is something you insure against, not something you chase for fun. That's why it still feels ridiculous to type this. I bought a shipping container at the port site unseen. It started like most bad decisions do in your late 30s, quietly with numbers. My wife, Marissa, had just finished a round of physical therapy after a back injury that turned into a whole saga with specialists and MRIs, and this should be covered conversations that somehow always ended with us paying anyway. I'd been covering everything on one salary. We weren't starving, but the margin was gone. Every surprise charge landed like a punch. Then my buddy Kyle from work told me he'd been buying lost freight and flipping it. It's like storage units, he said, but bigger. Sometimes it's garbage. Sometimes it's a jackpot. I laughed it off. I'm not a gambler. But I went home and opened my spreadsheet and stared at the red cells. Kyle kept talking about it over the next few weeks like he was casually describing a hobby, which made it sound less dangerous than it was. He showed me pictures, pallets of brand new small appliances, cases of hair tools, a whole container of boxed sneakers he swore were authentic. All from port auctions, he said. You pay fees, you hire a drayage guy to pull it, then you unload and sell. If you're organized, it's easy money. Organized is my love language. That's how I justified even considering it. I did research. I read Port Authority auction rules, liquidation forums, horror stories about hazmat and counterfeit goods. I built a cost model. Auction price plus buyer premium plus storage days, plus drayage plus warehouse rental plus labor plus disposal. I told myself I wasn't dreaming about jackpot. I was evaluating upside. Marissa didn't love it. So you're going to buy a mystery box? The size of a truck? It's not a mystery box, I said, like a calm adult. It's an asset with a probability curve. She gave me that look that says you're using math to disguise anxiety. The truth was, I wanted a way out of the constant squeeze. I wanted air. Kyle introduced me to a guy named Dennis who helps people bid. Dennis wasn't official, but he acted like he was plugged into everything. He had that smooth, friendly confidence that makes you forget to ask why he's so eager. Most people don't know what they're doing, Dennis told me on the phone. They bid wrong, they don't factor fees, they panic when the port starts charging demurrage. I'll steer you away from junk. How do you know what's junk if it's sealed? I asked. He chuckled. Patterns. Shipping manifests, routes, the kind of company that abandoned it. That should have been my first red flag. The auctions were supposed to be as is, where is. No guarantees. Yet this guy was talking like he could read fate. Still, he sent me a list of containers coming up. Most were described in vague terms: household goods, general merchandise, mixed retail. One was labeled medical supplies/equipment. It had been sitting long enough to rack up fees, which meant someone had walked away from it. Medical can be big, Dennis said. Hospitals always need stuff. I pictured pallets of gloves, masks, maybe equipment with resale value. My spreadsheet perked up. Marissa overheard and said, "Please don't bring something contagious into our lives." I promised I wouldn't do anything reckless. Then I put in a bid. The day of the auction, I sat at my desk pretending to work while refreshing the bidding page like a teenager stalking concert tickets. I'd set a hard cap based on my model. I wasn't going to get emotional. I wasn't going to just a little more my way into debt. Dennis texted me mid-morning. "That medical container is hot. Don't hesitate." That line, "Don't hesitate," hit something in me, like a dare, like money was waiting on the other side of my courage. I raised my bid by $1,500 above my cap. I told myself it was still within reason because the potential upside was high. I told myself I was adapting to market conditions, not panicking. When I won, the confirmation email landed with a thud in my stomach. Winning didn't feel like triumph. It felt like a door closing behind me. Kyle slapped my shoulder later like I joined a club. "Dude, you're in. Now the fun part." Fun, right? At home, Marissa listened while I explained the fees and timeline. She didn't yell. She just got quiet and said, "If this goes bad, we can't afford a lesson." "I know," I said, and I meant it. I was the responsible one. I had it controlled. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing numbers and a sealed steel box I'd paid for without seeing inside. Pulling the container out was its own mini nightmare. The port didn't care that I was a regular guy with a mortgage. They cared about paperwork and time. Every day it sat, it cost more. I hired a drayage company Dennis recommended. I rented a small warehouse bay for 1 month, figuring I'd unload and list everything quickly. When the truck finally backed up to the bay, I felt my chest tighten. The container looked like every other container. Dented, scuffed, stickers layered like old band posters. A plastic seal hung from the latch. Kyle showed up with gloves and a box cutter like this was a tailgate party. Dennis didn't come, which I didn't notice at the time because I was focused on the moment. I recorded on my phone, partly for content, Kyle said videos help sales, and partly because I wanted proof of what I found in case something went sideways. I broke the seal. The doors swung open and the smell hit first. Not rotten, not chemical. More like cold cardboard and that sterile, faintly metallic smell you get in hospitals. Inside were pallets wrapped tight in clear plastic. Everything was boxed. Everything looked new. Kyle whistled. Bro. My brain started doing math so fast it felt like buzzing. Boxes labeled with brand names I recognized from medical supply catalogs. Portable monitors. Infusion pumps. Cases of disposables. The kind of stuff with insane markup. I remember thinking, we're saved. That was twist number 1, and it felt like a miracle. We spent the first day just inventorying. I made a spreadsheet with item counts, model numbers, and estimated resale. I kept telling Kyle, don't open anything yet. Let's document. We cracked open one pallet and found brand new monitors with protective film still on the screens. Another pallet was infusion pumps still sealed. There were also several heavy crates with hazard labels. Not biohazard, but battery warnings. Kyle was already talking about buyers. I know a guy who runs a clinic, he said. We can move this fast. That night Marissa came by the warehouse. She stood in the doorway, looking at all those boxes like she couldn't decide whether to be relieved or terrified. This is a lot, she said. It's legitimate, I said quickly. It's all packaged. We'll sell through proper channels. Pay taxes. Do it right. I said it with conviction because I needed to believe it. Responsible. Controlled. Marissa walked up to a box, ran her finger over a label, then froze. Babe, she said quietly. Why does this say property of... I leaned in. There was a sticker under the shipping label. Faded but readable. Property of U.S. Government. Do not resale. My mouth went dry. Kyle, behind us, said, that's probably old, like surplus. But the sticker didn't look old. It looked like someone had tried to cover it. My miracle started to feel like a trap. I called Dennis immediately. It went to voicemail. I texted, need to talk. Government property labels inside. No response. Kyle said, dude, don't freak out. Lots of stuff gets auctioned as surplus. Not like this, I said. Not through a random port auction. I started Googling serial numbers and model numbers. Some of the equipment came up in government procurement catalogs. Some matched recent contracts. The more I searched, the worse I felt. Marissa was quiet in the passenger seat on the drive home. When we got inside, she said the thing I'd been avoiding. If this is stolen, we can get in trouble. I bought it legally, I said. But even as I said it, I realized how flimsy that sounded. I bought it at an auction. As is. No warranty of title. No guarantee it wasn't contraband. I called Patricia, our attorney from when we refinanced, who told me immediately to stop selling, stop moving anything, and document everything. That sticker matters, she said. A lot. I didn't sleep again. I kept imagining federal agents showing up at my job. My mother calling me, confused, while I'm sitting in an interview room. Dennis finally texted the next morning. Relax. Happens. Don't call anyone official. We can still make this work. That was twist number 2. Not the labels, the fact Dennis knew, and his first instinct was to keep me quiet. I told Kyle we weren't selling anything until we cleared it. He got angry in a way I didn't expect. "Man, you're overreacting," he said. "You're always like this, always looking for the worst case." "The worst case is prison," I said. He rolled his eyes. "Nobody's going to prison over some stickers." That was the moment I saw something in him I'd ignored. Kyle wasn't flipping containers because he was savvy. He was flipping them because he needed money fast and didn't care how it looked. Later that day, Marissa asked, "How much did you really bid?" I told her, and her face shifted. Not into anger, exactly. More like betrayal. "You went over your cap," she said. "It was a calculated adjustment," I said automatically. "No," she said, voice rising. "It was desperation, and you didn't tell me. That fight wasn't about the container. It was about trust and the way money turns you into someone who keeps secrets for the greater good." Patricia advised we contact the auction house and the port authority. My stomach twisted at the idea, but I did it. The auction house's response was icy. The sale was final. They had no responsibility. They suggested I consult counsel like I hadn't already. The port authority forwarded me to a customs contact. And then my phone rang from a blocked number. "Dennis, you called customs?" He snapped, like I'd insulted his mother. "I'm trying to protect myself," I said. "You're trying to ruin everything," he said. "Do you have any idea what you have?" I realized he wasn't worried about me. He was worried about losing his cut. Customs showed up 3 days later. Not in dramatic movie fashion. 2 people in plain clothes and 1 in a uniform. They were polite, serious, and very practiced at making you feel small without raising their voices. They walked the warehouse, photographed labels, scanned serial numbers. One of them opened a crate and looked inside without touching anything, like he already knew what he'd see. Finally, the plainclothes woman asked, "Who told you to bid on this container?" My throat tightened. I wanted to say no one, but I'd already told Patricia everything. Lying would only make it worse. I gave them Dennis's info. I gave them Kyle's info. I gave them the auction paperwork. They asked if I'd sold anything. I hadn't, thank God. Kyle had, though. He admitted he'd taken a couple boxes the first day to test the market. He said it casually, like that wasn't a massive problem. The agent's eyes changed when he said that, like a switch flipped from investigating to building a case. They seized the container. Red tags, signed forms, locks. Just like that, my asset turned into evidence. As they left, the woman said, almost gently, "You did the right thing calling us early." I nodded like a robot. After they left, Kyle punched a wall. "You just cost me money," he said, and all I could think was, we're both going to lose a lot more than money. A week passed, then 2. My warehouse rent was still due. The drayage bill hit. Storage fees I hadn't predicted piled up because the port had its own timeline for seized goods. My spreadsheet, which had looked so hopeful, turned into a slow hemorrhage. Marissa started sleeping with her back to me. She wasn't mean. She was just distant, like she was watching a different version of me walk around our house wearing my face. Then Patricia called with news that sounded like a win. Customs had confirmed much of the equipment was indeed government procured, but it wasn't stolen from a hospital like I'd feared. It was part of a shipment that had been diverted and abandoned during a contractor dispute. There were ongoing investigations, but because I'd cooperated and hadn't sold anything, I wasn't currently a target. "There may also be a possibility of restitution," Patricia said. "If the government clears certain items as surplus or releases them after the dispute, you could recover some value." That was the false resolution. I felt my body unclench for the first time in a month. I told Marissa, and she cried, relief, exhaustion, maybe grief. I told myself, okay, we'll take a hit, but we're not ruined. Crisis over. I even started redoing the spreadsheet to show how we could rebound. Then Kyle texted me, "We need to talk." Like now. Kyle showed up at my house looking wrecked. Not hungover wrecked. More like, I've been staring at a wall for 3 days. He sat at my kitchen table and finally said, "I didn't just take a couple boxes." My stomach sank. He confessed he'd moved a lot of inventory out the first day. Several monitors, multiple infusion pumps, through a guy who paid cash and didn't ask questions. Kyle said he needed it because he was behind on child support and his ex had threatened to take him back to court. "I was going to pay you back," he said quickly. "Once I flipped them, I swear." I stared at him, trying to keep my voice even. "Kyle, those were tagged as government property." He rubbed his face like he could erase the words. "I didn't think it was real. Dennis said it was fine. Dennis said this was the whole point." Dennis again. Kyle slid his phone across the table. A thread of texts from Dennis, pricing, buyers, instructions. And one message that made my blood go cold. "If anything goes wrong, remember whose name is on the bid." Mine. That was twist number 3. The container wasn't a lucky mistake. It was a setup with my name as the shield. Marissa came into the kitchen halfway through and heard enough to go pale. Kyle looked at her and said, "I'm sorry." Like that fixed anything. After he left, Marissa whispered, "So we're the fall guys." I didn't answer because I couldn't. Patricia went into full damage control mode. She had me write a detailed timeline, hand over Kyle's messages, and stop all contact with Dennis. But the money bleed kept going. Warehouse rent, legal fees. My sick twist of irony was that the container, this thing I'd bought to fix our finances, was actively destroying them. Marissa and I started fighting about everything. Not loud fights, but those small, corrosive ones where you're really arguing about fear. She wanted to tell her parents. I didn't. She wanted to sell her car to build a cushion. I said we should wait until we knew if we'd recover value from restitution. She heard "wait" as "you still think this ends with profit." And she wasn't wrong. I kept clinging to the idea that doing the right thing would be rewarded. That the world had a ledger. Then Patricia called and said Customs wanted another interview with me alone. In that interview, they asked about my finances, debts, bills, medical expenses. They asked about Dennis, sure, but they also asked why I was willing to spend money I didn't have to chase a score. I answered like I always answer, calm, rational, structured. But somewhere in the middle, I heard myself say, I just needed a win. And I realized how thin my responsible identity had gotten, how close it was to cracking. Part 13. A month later, Dennis was arrested. Not because of my container alone, but because of a larger network, diverted shipments, fake paperwork, buyers who resold through gray market medical suppliers. Patricia called it organized theft dressed up as liquidation. I felt vindicated for about 10 minutes. Then the subpoena came, not for Dennis. For me, for my bank records, for my communications, for my warehouse lease, for everything. I wasn't being charged, but I was being pulled into the machinery, and that machinery didn't care that I'd been cooperative. Cared about tracing money. The agent told Patricia something that landed like a weight. Dennis's crew had used clean bidders to buy containers so they could claim plausible deniability. Clean bidders like me. And Dennis had told them I was stable and by the book, which made me low risk. That word, low risk, hit harder than an insult. It meant I'd been selected for my predictability. My control had made me useful. Twist number 4 wasn't about what was in the container. It was about what was in me. The part that believed rules would protect me, and the part that wanted money enough to ignore how weird Dennis sounded. Marissa started talking about separation like it was logistics. Like we were already past heartbreak and into damage limitation. I didn't blame her. I felt like a liability. Then, unbelievably, Customs released a portion of the seized goods as non-sensitive surplus after the contractor dispute resolved. Not the big-ticket pumps and monitors, those stayed locked up, but pallets of disposables, basic equipment, non-controlled items. Patricia told me I could legally take possession and sell through approved channels. For a second, it felt like the universe handing me a rope back out. I did it right. I sold through a registered liquidation partner, paid taxes, kept receipts, reported everything. The payout wasn't huge, but it was enough to stop the bleeding. Enough to pay down the worst of our credit card balance and cover legal fees that had been stacking like bricks. Marissa looked at the deposit in our account and exhaled. So, we're okay? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe the story had turned. We went out to dinner for the first time in months, sitting across from each other like we were learning how to be married again. We talked about normal things. We laughed once, unexpectedly, and it felt like sunlight through clouds. That night I thought we survived. We took the hit, but we're intact. 2 days later, I got a certified letter from the IRS. It turned out the liquidation payout had triggered reporting tied to the investigation, and someone who had access to my information, had filed a fraudulent business entity using my name months earlier. A medical supply resale LLC with a mailing address in another state. It had income reported, deductions claimed. A mess I'd never seen because I wasn't looking for it. On paper, I wasn't just a guy who bought one container. I was running a shady side business. The IRS didn't care that it wasn't me. They cared that my SSN was attached. They cared that money moved. I felt my calm crack in a way I'd never felt before, like my body finally admitted what my brain kept trying to control. You can do everything right and still get crushed if someone decides you're useful. Patricia traced it back through filings and, of course, Dennis's network. But the timing suggested it wasn't random. It was preparation. Like they'd planned to hang the whole thing on me if the container got flagged. Marissa sat at the table while I explained, hands shaking around my coffee mug. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just said, "I can't keep living like we're one letter away from our life collapsing." And that was it. Not a dramatic explosion. Just a quiet, final line drawn by money. We're separated now. I'm renting a small apartment and rebuilding my credit like a penitent. Marissa is staying with her sister while she figures out what she wants. The irony is brutal. The container didn't bankrupt us in one dramatic moment. It bled us, slowly, through fees and stress and mistrust. The thing that permanently changed me isn't that I saw boxes of medical gear in a steel container. It's that I saw how fast I became someone who could justify anything because I needed a win. I used to think I was responsible and in control. Now I understand I was just cautious until the numbers got scary enough. And once money becomes the loudest voice in your head, it doesn't just make you take risks. It makes you believe you deserve the reward for taking them, even when you're walking into someone else's trap.